I'll call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Hillsborough River Interlocal Planning Board and Technical Advisory Council for Monday, April 19th, 2022. Mr. College, I will ask you to conduct a roll call.
Okay, and we can just go around the table. It would probably be easiest. Joining us today,
Melissa Zornita.
I'm Sean College, the Executive Director of the River Board.
Heather Maggio with the City of Tampa. I'm Melissa Wiggins with the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. Meredith Naples, City Secretary.
Joseph Cicero, Tampa City Council.
Stacy White, Hillsborough County Commission.
Rich Brown, the Hillsborough County Citizen Representative to TAC from the Sheriff.
Mitchell Formica, citizen representative.
Stu Marvin, Temple Terrace.
Michael Guile, Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission.
Amber Smith, I'm in Government Affairs representing Smith.
And we have a couple of people online who are members. Mr. Gross, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Sean, they're not.
Okay. Yeah, Joe Gross,
Joe Gross.
Hillsborough County staff.
Right, member of the TAC. And we also have a guest today, presenter, Carla Price. Carla, you're on the line. If you could unmute yourself.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Carla Price with City of Tampa Parks and Recreation Department.
And the rest are staff helping out. Thank you.
Very good. And let the record reflect that all three voting board members are here, so we have a quorum. And with that being said, I'll ask for everyone to stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Mr. College, do we have any public comment?
I don't believe so. If anyone wishes to speak, they can do so now. Hearing none.
All right, let the record reflect there was no public comment, and I will ask for a motion to approve summaries from previous board meetings. That would be the January 24th River Board meeting and the March 15th TAC meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Let the record reflect that that passed unanimously. Mr. Collins, that takes us to presentations, reports, and status updates.
Yeah, if we could just real quick, item D under the previous item is the TAC minutes, because it's a joint meeting. You have two boards here. So if we could have a motion for the TAC
I have a
minutes.
motion to accept the minutes of the last TAC meeting.
Second.
Motion made second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. That carries as well. Thank you.
Okay. And yes, now we're at your presentations, and we're pleased, our first item on the agenda, pleased to have Melissa Zornita, the Executive Director of Plan Hillsborough, with us today to talk about the Plan Hillsborough Strategic Plan and Annual Report.
Great, thank you. I'm excited to be with you all and to have you all here in person. I'm Melissa Zornita, the Executive Director of the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. And we have a joint strategic plan that was formulated by the Planning Commission, the Transportation Planning Organization, and the River Board. And the strategic plan has 7 components. And so we annually report on the status of the implementation of the strategic plan. That's the document that was handed out to you all. I'm just going to give kind of a high-level summary of some of the things that we've done, and then take any questions. So as I said, we have 7 areas of focus within the strategic plan, so I'll walk through a couple of items on each of them. And the strategic plan was originally adopted in 2018. And it has about a 5-year lifespan. So look forward to in 2023 that we'll be starting to talk about our next strategic plan and want all of your input in that. In terms of the different work areas, the first of which is citizen engagement, we served close to 2,000 clients in the last year. We did about 78 community presentations, and a couple of highlights of our work. We created a Spanish translation group within our organization, so any of the documents that we produce or information we're pushing out to the public, we have the ability to translate those into Spanish. We created an agency-wide non-discrimination plan. We also have a video series called 1 Minute Matters that is focused right now on missing middle housing and locating some of those housing opportunities close to places that are walkable and have transit access. But that series we envision in the future branching out into other topics. And so if there are areas that the River Board has ideas on, we'd welcome those. In terms of planning partnerships, we hosted 10 educational events with the community. One of the big things that we did is something I'm really proud of. The kids on the photo on the trolley were part of a program called Flip Junior. Flip stands for Future Leaders in Planning. And we've, for a number of years, had a program geared towards high school students that's called Flip. And then this last summer, we did Flip Junior, partnering with 3 summer camps in Town and Country, Tampa Heights, and Palm River, and teaching the children about planning concepts and civic engagement and how they can be involved in their community. Right now, I'll plug that Flip, the high school program, is accepting applications. So if you have any high school kids or know any who would like to learn about this, the week of Memorial Day, that Tuesday through Friday, we have an educational program where they go and tour different parts of the community and learn about how they can be engaged in planning for the community's future. We've been very busy working on updates to the county's comprehensive plan and the city of Tampa's comprehensive plan. In particular, for the county, have worked on the conservation and environmental elements, as well as the coastal management. And those were recently awarded an award at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council's Future of the Region Award. So kudos to Sean and Diego of our team who worked on that project. In terms of linking land use and transportation, that was one of the pieces of the strategic plan that the boards wanted us to focus on. We've been working on implementation of transit-oriented development in collaboration with the HART. The Transportation Planning Organization has an air quality monitoring pilot study they're implementing. Commissioner White will be very familiar with the completion of the Waimama and the RP2 land use studies. And Councilman Citra will know a lot about the mixed use work we've been doing in the city of Tampa. So, and then we got one for each one of you. This is a great slide. Thanks, Melissa. In Temple Terrace, we've done a number of land use map amendments to help support some of their economic development and job creation. So we've been busy supporting all 4 local governments in this regard. In terms of regionalism, we participate in a lot of regional meetings, over 40, and some of the big highlights here were that there was a lot of work related to resiliency done in coordination with the Regional Planning Council and the Transportation Planning Organization, looking at issues of sea level rise, evacuation plans, and how we can make our infrastructure more resilient. In terms of enabling transportation choices, we updated the county's comprehensive plan to create a mobility section, which was quite transformational in terms of some of its goals being updated to focus on safety and providing more choices of how people can get around in the community. A study was done of several parks in our community and how we can look at speed around those parks. The Transportation Improvement Program was made into a much more user-friendly document over this last year, and the Transportation Disadvantage Plan was updated as well. Technology and innovation is something we pride ourselves on. And probably the biggest thing was, as it was for probably many of you, working through all of these hybrid, different meeting configurations that we've had over the last year. We have these owls that will turn and see each of you, and figured out the best way to hold. We have a lot of committees and different groups that meet here at the Planning Commission. And so we want to have the best way to get people involved in those. We have created a database of all of our comprehensive plan policies called CPUD that has been cited as a best practice model by a couple of other municipalities across the country. And then we have a whole section of our website focused on census and demographic data that has been updated to have some visualization of that data and make it more user-friendly. And then internal to our agency, we're always working on maintaining morale and making sure that folks, particularly when working in a hybrid environment, feel a part of the organization. We're very pleased to have been named a Gold Bicycle Friendly Business in the last year. We have updated a number of our internal processes to reflect our non-discrimination plan in terms of our hiring and training, making sure we have policies on diversity and inclusion. So as I said, that those are just a few of the highlights. When you flip through the printout, there's a whole lot more. And so welcome any questions on those. As you see, this is something our staff meets annually. We met in December and talked about what ideas for the next year we could continue to move the ball forward with on our strategic plan, and then look forward to next year, the update of the strategic plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Melissa?
Y'all are an easy group. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Appreciate it. Thank you. Great to see you all.
Yeah. All right, Mr. College, I believe that takes us to an idle/slow speed zones update.
I'm going to queue up a presentation. Just one second. Okay, so yes, on your agenda, later in the agenda, one of the tort permits you have is related to signage for slow speed zones in the river. So we thought this was a good time to go ahead and, I lost it, hang on just one second, invite Carla Price from the city of Tampa, who's going to talk to us about the status of the slow speed zones in the river. Carla, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, thanks so much for asking me to come update you today. I was actually with you guys in 2020 and kind of gave you a little bit of background and overview of what we were doing. And since that time, we go to the next slide. In October of 2020, City Council adopted the changes to our current ordinance that updates and makes some changes to the boating restricted areas in the Hillsborough River. Next. As you guys probably all know, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission Division of Law Enforcement, Boating and Waterways section oversees all of the boating restrictions in the waterways of Florida. And that is a power that was given to them through state statutes. Next. So the Florida Statute 327 regulates what local governments can do within their areas to regulate boating in their waterways. And that has to be done through and with FWC. Next. So since the adoption of our ordinance, we were able to go ahead and submit permit application to FWC, and that was approved on August 27th of last year for the waterway markers on the Hillsborough River. And that was based on 2 to 3 years of work, and we worked very closely with Tampa Police Department Marine Unit and with FWC to come up with our plan. Next. So I thought I'd kind of refresh your memories on what this new ordinance and restrictions are applied to the Hillsborough River. And I'm going to start at the north end. The green area on your map shows the Lowry Park in an idle speed zone there in 500 feet in each direction of the boat ramp. And the orange area just to the south of it is a slow speed area going underneath the Sly Avenue Bridge, and that's 300 feet north and south of it. Next. This is the Hillsborough River Bridge, and this is has an existing boating restricted area, but we updated it and it extends it a little bit. So it's 300 foot in each direction of the boat bridge fenders that are there, and that's an idle speed or slow speed zone. Sorry about that. Next. Martin Luther King Bridge, and this is a new boating restricted area, and it's a slow speed zone. Next. And then we come to downtown, which is where there's a whole lot of changes, starting with Columbus Avenue Bridge. We start on 300 feet on the north side of it with a slow speed zone that continues down just past the boat ramp at Ricks on the River. And you can see on your map, there's a gap there. And unfortunately, based on the Florida statutes, there wasn't any way for us to continue that slow speed zone any further. So we've got about a 900-foot gap there. And we are working continuously to try and find ways to close that. So far, we have not been successful, but we have not given up. So that slow speed zone picks up again 300 feet from the North Boulevard Bridge and continues all the way south. Next slide. As you can see, it continues past the intersection of the Hillsborough River with Sudden Channel and the Garrison Channel, and goes just south to there's a dock at Tampa General, and that's where the slow speed area stops. And again, we have about a 1,500-foot gap in that area before an idle speed zone at the Marjorie Park Marina. So this is the boating restricted areas that the ordinance that was passed in 2020 established. Next slide. So where we are today. So we got approval from FWC last September. And upon that approval, we were able to submit our Army Corps permit for the installation of the waterway markers, the piles, and the signage. It's associated with those boating restricted areas. I spoke with the Army Corps in February, and at that time, there were still 2 divisions that needed to review our permit application. So as of today, we have not received the permit yet for the installation of the markers. In January, we submitted a Port Tampa Bay permit, and as Sean said, that's on your agenda today to take a look at. We did a site visit last week. I know EPC sent a letter of approval to Port Tampa Bay, and we're also applying for a verification of exception through DEP, which we have received on previous applications, and we'll also be submitting for a City of Tampa permit 60 days out from installation of the waterway markers. Next slide. So one of the things I wanted to go over too in regards to the waterway markers is exactly where we're going to be putting them. We have 49 total signs that'll be on 18 piles in the river, which is a total of 36 signs on piles. The remaining signs will be installed on bridge fenders or on the bridge themselves. So you can see starting up at Lowry Park, the markers shown there and at the Martin Luther King Bridge will be on piles. Next slide. Martin Luther King, yeah, those are piles. And as you continue south to the Columbus Avenue Bridge or Columbus Drive Bridge, we've got markers on piles and we've got markers on bridge fenders. We've got markers on on piles at Ricks on the River, where our slow speed zone in that area ends and where it picks up again. And then from the North Boulevard Bridge all the way down to Tampa Convention Center, we have signs on bridge fenders. Those were not required, but we felt it was important in working with the police department. They felt it was important to remind people that they were still in a slow speed zone as they go through downtown. Next slide. And then you can see that confluence of Sutton Channel, Garrison, that we've got some signs on the bridge structures themselves. And in Sutton Channel, we'll be adding new piles with signs on those. Next slide. So next steps. One of the first is the installation. Once we get all of our permitting, of course, is the installation of all the signs and piles. We don't have funding currently for that, but we are requesting funding in our next budget year. We anticipate the cost to be between $70,000 and $90,000. We're going to have a public education element prior to the installation, and we'll be working with the police department on that. We're thinking about signage at all the boat ramps that talk about these new boating restricted areas, and cards that can be handed out at boat ramps, on rental facilities, which there's a lot of now that are using the river. And then enforcement will be up to Tampa Police Marine Unit, and that's something we'll be working closely with them on, especially on the public education element. I'm sure as we get closer to the installation of the waterway markers, that TPD would be willing to kind of get with you guys and give you their plan for enforcement. And that's all I had, but I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Price?
Mr. Chair, if I may, please. Ms. Price, we keep talking about that one section south of Ricks River constantly. Is there anything that this board can do, either one of these boards, writing a letter, making our comments known that that is the only gap from, what is it, Sly all the way down to Tampa General that it doesn't have a speed limit on it? What can we do?
That's a good question. You know, we have looked at probably all of the options that we have. We've talked with FWC on numerous occasions. They've been here and visited. They've actually been on the water and looked at the area. You know, we've talked with the Cruisacade. If they opened up their facility as a public facility, that would help. But it's our understanding that's not something they're interested in doing at this time. We're looking at options on the opposite side of the river as we go forward with the build grant that will extend our river walk on that side, on the west side of the river, possibly doing a canoe kayak access point. That could possibly help also with slowing down the speeds and connecting up that gap area.
I thank you for that. I've traveled with the police department on the multitude of boat parades that we've had lately. And they're saying, excuse my language, that all hell breaks loose at that point. And that is the least safest part of the river. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir, any other questions or
I have a comment. Most of the people that live up and down the river are thrilled that this is occurring. Things are slowing down. People that are not so thrilled, people who have go-fast boats further up the river, and now it takes much longer to get out into the bay. So some of the people who like to fish, they're not happy. It's just how that goes. Yeah, there goes. Things have changed. Downtown is busy with all the rental boats and the yellow taxis and people going into armature work and all of that stuff. The nature of that has changed. There's a lot of low to the water, slow boats out there with people that don't know anything about boating. You can rent them. So this is a good thing. Mostly thumbs up, simple fishing. And actually, a lot of those folks who used to put in at Lowry are now going down. Some of them are going to Apollo Beach, and some of them are really using the ramp on Davis Island. So they are responding slowly to the reality.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
I had a thought. I didn't know if maybe the speaker had contacted the state representative and state senator for the area because they have legislative liaisons within FWC. That could.
We have not, but that's a good suggestion, and we can look into that.
Hey, Carla, it's Jackie, Julia with Port of Bay. First of all, thank you so much for you and City of Tampa Marine taking me and EPC out last week to look at all these locations. I forgot to ask you though, did they say anything about the Stewart Middle School being on the opposite side across from like the Cruisacade area as being some potential support for the slow speed zone?
Yeah, we looked into that. You know, we just have to go by what the Florida statutes allow us to do. And right now, the public access to that area behind Stewart Middle School is pretty limited. So I think that's a factor that has to be taken into consideration. Until we can open it up a little bit better, then we have more opportunities.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I know Tom Reese kind of used that school as like a pilot study for like the living shorelines and for like some of the elementary environmental classes. I don't know if that was also mentioned about the kids potentially using that shoreline for education and that also being a reason for potentially, but I see your point about public access not being that wide right now.
Yeah.
That would be something else I would also mention is that was a living shoreline grant with Tom Reese's group for the purpose of the kids' education.
Right.
That's it. I'll keep thinking about other options, and if I have any more, I'll throw them your way.
Sounds good.
You could open a bar with it. Or Tampa Bay Bar.
Personal Jackie's Oasis Bar.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Price? All right, we thank you for the presentation. Excellent presentation.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Brown, I think that takes us to the TAC update.
It does, my gosh. All of the request to find permits consistent with the master plan, those are pretty non-controversial, most of the docks. There's one that a real good neighbor is One Ashley Tower right here downtown, who is doing a real nice job of putting stormwater filters into the new stormwater drains. Flooding in front of the building, putting permit for drains. The city, EPC work with them. Now they put some really good quality drains. That's good for the river and yay for them for being good neighbors. Another good neighbor is Freedom Boat Club, right side of the rights on the river. For quite a while, and some of the boats can get up to plane speed. On 2 boats and some moderate powered regular home boats. And they were just giving lip service to the fact that there are restricted waterways, restricted speeds, on speed zones. Enough of the folks, including Joe Coolin, who was one of the recipients of the River Stewardship Award, worked real hard with them, and that Ricks in the River is really making a pretty strong push to have the renters understand that this isn't a fight. And things have gotten better, so yay for Joe and his people, and yay for people. All in all, it's been a nice rainy winter. Good rain equals good stormwater drain. And River's been in pretty good shape. Both upper and lower doing really well. In fact, we had dolphins right up to the base of the dam about a month ago. It was an juvenile, like fishing lesson. And, it was pretty cool to see. With that means they're air breathers, but they are pretty sensitive to water quality. And the water quality has been pretty good. We are starting to enter the dry season. The water is warming up, so we're starting to get some of the summer vegetation, duckweed and water hyacinth above the dams now, so they're coming over the dam and in the lower river. We're starting to get a little bit of water warms up, some of the algae that grows on the bottom. Not the toxic stuff, but it is just kind of yucky. You may have seen recently there's research just published looking at the real toxic algae blooms, ones that are mostly associated with Indian River, Lake Okeechobee, recently here at Piney Point. Usually shows up in our area southwest, Pinellas County, and down into Venice and that area. We know that the short-term effects of the neurotoxins and respiratory, there's now some pretty good research that there are serious long-term effects of breathing those neurotoxins. Those show up primarily as neurological degradation, like ALS, or liver damage. Toxic blooms are really nasty stuff. Short-term and long-term, anything we can do to keep that from happening. 70s, 80s, and 90s in the lower river, we used to get some of those. Since we started minimum flow and the fertilizer ordinance, pretty rare. I think it was one maybe 10 years ago. Sean, but there hasn't been one since. So all the efforts to improve water quality have actually paid off. But a couple of nice presentations at the TAC, one on disturbed wetlands, and one that came in with a draft of a resilient shoreline set of ordinances. It will eventually someday be presented as code, but this is pretty much taking best practices for what to do with the shoreline in an urban setting. Really nice to see. There's been a lot of stuff word of mouth, but this was really gathering a bunch of good data. That's the draft. We'll have to bring that to you at some point, because some of your citizens will be either saying, boy, that was really great having that, or I wanted to do this, and now you're telling me I can't. Nothing you haven't heard before?
Yeah, I could add, just a little to that. That's something I've been involved in a little bit. It's coming out of the Regional Resilience Coalition through the Regional Planning Council. But one of their efforts is to do this draft resilient shoreline ordinance, a model ordinance. The idea being that as sea levels rise, it's going to be a benefit to everybody if everyone's shoreline treatments are similar and have the same standards. You know, if one community has a seawall this tall and the other community is a little bit lower, the water rises, you're not going to be protecting the shoreline. So it seems like a very useful and good effort. It's just starting to get to a draft form, but I think all the local jurisdictions that have coastline are going to be presented with that from the Regional Planning Council, the coalition, as a model ordinance that everyone should be considering probably in the future. So there'll be more to come.
Okay, there are two other major issues going on, the same ones that have been going on for quite a while. One is the SwiftMud issue of reevaluating the minimum flow at the Rowlett Park Dam and at Sulphur Springs Park. The rule was for 29 months of the year and 24 in dry season, freshwater equivalent released at the dam. It's actually rarely been met. It's been met when there's so much rainfall, there's massive amounts of rain coming through. But first with mud, and now the last couple of years, it's been the city responsible for making those numbers, and it just hasn't happened. They've come close. One of the difficulties then is hard to do the research on a plan that hasn't been met. But that will be part of the data crunching that Swiftmud will be doing. The other is that primarily the city of Swiftmud, especially the city, has primarily used water from Sulphur Springs, which can get pumped up to the dam. And that does a couple of things. One, it's not totally fresh water. Saltwater intrusion in the county, in the city, everywhere. Now the Sulphur Springs water has some salt to it. The more that gets pumped up there, the saltier it gets. Saltwater intrusion is able to come in further. So the Sulphur Springs water is getting saltier and saltier. The other sources are polluting up on Linebaugh in Florida and the Tampa Bypass Canal. And those have been, blue things recently come online. Tampa Bypass Canal hasn't been used as much as it's possible to use it. There is water available that has not been consistently used. So, as part of the negotiations with Swiftmud, we'll see if we can get the city to use all of that water and meet the equivalent. Freshwater equivalent is like a gallon of fresh water. When it comes from Sulphur Springs, you may have to pump a gallon and a quarter in order to get the equivalent of 1 gallon. So that's being done. There are major ongoing negotiations within Swiftmud and the stakeholders, which include the city, EPC, and a number of citizen organizations, Legal Women Voters, Sierra Club, and Friends of the River. That's ongoing. Pumping Sulphur Springs a lot has implications because it's going to be harder to meet the minimum flow requirement. The Sulphur Springs is a major source of fresh water for manatees. Manatees are air breathers, they have to drink fresh water. It's kind of salty. They go up to the dam and get fresh water. It's mostly Sulphur Springs water pumped up there. It has some potential for impact manatee health, especially since in the cold spells in winter, the major area that the manatees will move to is Sulphur Springs because of the warmth of the water coming out. The water is too salty where they can stay warm, but they can't drink. Move out to find a fresh water source. So citizen groups are asking the city to meet the actual levels that are in the rules. And to not use Sulphur Springs so much, use the Tampa Bypass Canal more. And that leads us to the PURE project, running from county to the city. And PURE project, remember, is the 50 million gallons a day of water from a wastewater treatment plant on port property. The state has asked directly that not be done. So the city is looking to accomplish 3 things using that water. One is to drought-proof the reservoir that the city gets. That's the pipe that the city takes, the water that comes to the city's fresh water in that plant. It also can help meet the minimum flow levels. And of course, everything you take up there will reduce the amount that you have to put into the bay. You would also like to get a permit to pump that treated wastewater 800 feet or so into the lower aquifer. That at Swiftmud, they can, at times, depending on flow, take water out of the upper aquifer to use for the upper reservoir. That is still ongoing discussions, controversial on some areas, not so much on others. Probably in the next 3 months, for the minimum flows anyway. There's really, we had a big meeting last week, we've got another meeting this week in May. We may be bringing the river board, and we haven't finished the discussion amongst ourselves. Part of the joy of tax is we do have different constituencies. So we bring something to you, it's been vetted by a lot of people, not always agreed on. You have a majority vote, which y'all do every week. We may well be bringing to you a recommendation for you all to write a letter to the Swift, probably the Swift Mud, the EPC recommending this course. We'll let you know in advance, we won't spring anything. But it's a pleasure working with people trying to make things better, even if there are bona fide differences. That's what we do. Which problems are the most important? That's something you probably in your next report. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say. No, there's not. Happy to take questions on all that.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Great presentation, thorough presentation. Any questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Seeing that takes us to some consistency determinations, Mr. Collins.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the first four on your agenda have been vetted by your TAC, and they're recommending that you find them consistent with the master plan. The second three came after the last minute, but they're here in front of you, so you could ask them of the second three on your agenda if there are any concerns. The TAC here present prior to action would probably be appropriate.
So we would take, if there are no concerns about the latter three, we could just have a vote to approve all 7 of them today. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right, 74405 is a new dock and lift. 74424 is a new dock and lift, and those folks are actually neighbors, side by side. And the 22007 is the slow-speed waterway that was priced. Signage from that. So I'm looking around, Michael.
The first two, like Rich Brown said, they're right next to each other. Those are the EPC delegated minor work permit applications. Both of those actually have already been issued and sent permits. Both of them are basically replacement docks, dilapidated docks, and little replacement single-family docks with no non-covered boat lifts. They're both located in River Urban section and the court rolls. Everything for the terminal platform was under the maximum 520 square foot threshold. Everything looked all good in regards to the port's review of the EPC permits. We had no comments.
Then the last one with the signage,
And then the signage I'm reviewing right now. I haven't seen it.
you want us to hold off on that?
No.
Okay, no, I mean, vote on it?
Oh, you guys can go ahead. I already did the site visit with Carla last week.
So
So,
you're comfy with,
yeah.
okay. Okay,
So right now, the board is in the commenting period, a commenting period, like she mentioned. EPC already gave comments of no objection with the full conditions, no turbidity, be safe, only be permitted. If you guys had any other questions.
So you all
part of the
can-
presentation.
welcome, vote on all seven.
These sound routine and non-controversial, but here's what I'm going to do in the abundance of caution. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the first 4 and to also approve the latter 3, subject to them ultimately garnering recommendation of approval. Should any of those garner a recommendation for denial, I would ask that they come back to the board.
If from the TAC, you're saying.
Yes, that's who formulates these.
To make it kind of clean and easy, and I understand what you're saying, you could, the TAC is in the meeting right now with you. They could actually take formal action right now to recommend.
Let's do that. Let's ask the TAC to take formal action on the 3 that are pending a recommendation.
Move approval. Let's see, move approval, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Sorry, any discussion? We already discussed it. All opposed, nay. Okay, they have been found that we are recommending to you that they be found in board.
Consistent with the river master plan.
So now all 7 then have a recommendation of approval. So I'll ask for a motion from this board to approve all 7.
I move to approve all 7 consistency determinations.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that all 7 passed the river board unanimously. And is there any other business, Mr. Collins?
No, sir, we have no more business before you today.
Anything else for the good of the order from the group?
Thursday, April 22nd, Friday, don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna be presenting the Theodore Roosevelt Hillsborough Forever Conservation Award tomorrow at the county commission meeting. We always plan the presentation to be around Earth Day. So thank you for that recognition. I hope that we can all go out and do something that's good for the environment or conservation or whatever you think is most appropriate for that meaningful day. So thank you for that highlight. Yes, sir.
As I go around the state, although in the days of COVID, I go around the state west, it's amazing talking to both governmental agencies and citizen groups. They say, you have a river board, and you meet, you have elected officials, and you have all these people that are knowledgeable. It's saying they're jealous. I think it's an Indian river that has something similar, and that's it. I think it's the whole state. So what authority am I good for the whole river from here all the way up to Green Swamp? Yay, us.
So much is dependent on the river.
Yeah.
Drinking water, recreation. So we need something like this to keep our thumbs on protecting. Absolutely.
That's why I raised one other issue, the National Geographic. They have used a film called Before the Flood by climate control. I would recommend it to also the one way to show on the whole world so issues of climate control.
Excellent. Check that out. Anything else? All right.
You had asked me to pop by and take a look at the Jean Street shipyard.
Right.
We drove by it when we went out to look at the channel marker with the State Tampa Marine Unit and Carla. Everything looked good. It doesn't look as clean as it was a couple of years ago. It just looks like he's got more business, but the shoreline has been maintained clean. I didn't see any like debris or sinking vessels or any of that nature. All of the dock structures look to be in good condition. And the Marine Unit people, they had said that they popped by a few times as well. And so they've been keeping an eye on that facility as well.
Good. And that wouldn't have happened. Jack hadn't got on it and you had taken the ball and run with it. Yeah.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, everybody have a great week. Happy Earth Day. This meeting's adjourned.
Okay. In 3 months.